The colony was dead. Once, it had been full of life, full of lights and voices, but now it was only ruins. The war had taken everything, the buildings, the food, the families, and even hope itself. She walked slowly through the ashes, her thin cloak torn and dirty, her steps weak, her stomach empty. Her eyes, once bright, now carried only shadows. She had nothing left, no family, no friends, no one who would call her by name. Her people were gone, scattered, or enslaved, and she had survived only because she kept walking. For 3 days she had not eaten. The wind carried the smell of smoke, and the cold night air cut her skin like knives. But she kept moving because if she stopped, she would die. And she did not want to die. Not yet. Not when there might still be a chance, even a small one. In the distance, she saw lights. Not the broken fires of her ruined world, but warm, steady lights. The lights of humans. She stopped and stared, her heart beating faster. Humans were not her kind, but she had heard stories. Some said they were cruel, some said they were kind, but she did not care which was true. She only knew she needed them. She walked toward the settlement, her body swaying like she might fall at any moment. The guards at the edge of the farm raised their weapons when they saw her. Her skin was not like theirs, her face not like theirs, her eyes too wide, too bright, too alien. They shouted for her to stop, but she lifted her empty hands high. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I have nothing, please. I will work. I will do anything." The guards did not move at first. They whispered among themselves. Some said she was dangerous. Some said she should be turned away. But then the farmer came. He was tall, strong from years of work in the fields, with tired eyes but a steady hand. He looked at her, really looked. He saw the dirt on her skin, the hunger in her eyes, the trembling in her body. This was not a soldier, not a thief, not an enemy. This was someone who had lost everything. "What do you offer?" he asked, his voice calm but hard. She swallowed, shame burning in her chest, but she forced herself to speak. "I will work your fields by day. I will warm you by night. I have nothing else to give." The words hung in the air like a wound. The guards laughed bitterly, shaking their heads. But the farmer's eyes did not look away. There was something in her tone that told him she was not lying. It was not an offer made with pride, but with desperation. He thought of turning her away. He thought of the whispers the village would spread if he took her in. But then he thought of her eyes, hollow and desperate, and how easily she could fall dead at his feet. He made his choice. "You can work, you can stay," he said. The guards looked at him in shock, but he did not care. His word was law on his farm. She fell to her knees, not in worship but in relief. For the first time in weeks, she had found shelter. She whispered her thanks in a voice broken by tears. The farmer turned away, hiding the strange feeling rising in his chest. He told himself it was only pity, only kindness. But deep inside, he knew it was something more. That night, she lay in a small corner of his home. She ate the simple bread he gave her, and she slept with a blanket around her shoulders. Her body still ached, her heart still hurt, but for the first time, she was not alone. The farmer watched her from the shadows of the room. She was strange, yes, alien, yes, but she was also alive. And somehow, her presence felt like the beginning of something he could not yet name. Outside, the village whispered. Some said he was a fool. Some said he was cursed. But the farmer ignored them. Because when he looked at her, he did not see a burden. He saw a spark that might one day burn into something greater. And so, under the quiet sky, their story began, with nothing but an offer, and a choice that would change both their lives forever. The sun rose over the farmland, painting the sky in gold and red. The farmer walked out into his fields, the soil dark and rich, waiting for the day's work. Behind him, the alien woman followed, her steps unsteady but her eyes sharp. She carried no tools, no bag, nothing but her thin cloak. He stopped, handed her a worn hoe, and pointed toward the far rows of crops. "Work here," he said simply. She nodded, gripping the tool with trembling hands. The guards at the edge of the fields still watched her closely, whispering among themselves. Some thought she would steal, others thought she would run. But when the work began, their doubts began to fade. The alien woman bent low, her hands moving with strange but skilled motions. She pulled weeds, turned soil, and checked each plant as if she understood their language. Her body was weak, but she did not stop. The farmer noticed, his eyes narrowing as he watched her. By noon, sweat ran down her face, but she worked harder than many of his own men. When he brought her water, she took only one sip and handed the rest back. "Drink it all," he said, but she shook her head. "You need it," she whispered, her voice still broken. The farmer frowned, for he had never seen such self-denial from someone so desperate. There was more to her than hunger and fear. The village began to talk. Children pointed at her from the fences. Women whispered when she walked past. Men muttered in anger. "Why is she here?" they asked. "She is not one of us. She will bring trouble. Send her away before it is too late." The farmer ignored them, though their words struck deep. He had made a choice, and he would not break it. That night, as the sun set, the alien woman returned to his home. She sat by the fire, her cloak wrapped tight around her. The farmer gave her bread again, and this time a bowl of stew. She bowed her head before eating, as if it were sacred. Her silence filled the room, but it was not an empty silence. It was the silence of someone who carried heavy memories. He watched her carefully. Her scars were not only on her skin, but also in her eyes. She never asked for more food, never asked for comfort, only worked and gave thanks. The farmer felt a strange weight inside him, one he could not name. Perhaps it was respect, perhaps it was pity, or perhaps it was something he was not ready to admit. Days turned to weeks, and she remained. Every morning she rose before dawn. Every night she returned exhausted. The fields began to flourish more than before. The tools she touched seemed to last longer. She knew tricks, ways to repair, methods to improve. The farmer began to realize she was not only surviving, she was helping him survive too. But not everyone saw it. One evening, when the stars shone bright, a group of men came to his door. They knocked hard, their voices sharp. "You must send her away," they demanded. "She is not safe. She is not ours. She will bring danger upon us all." The farmer stood tall, meeting their eyes with steady calm. "She works harder than any of you," he said. "She asks for nothing but food and a place to sleep. She has earned her place here." The men growled in anger, but none dared push further. They left, muttering curses into the night. The alien woman, who had heard it all, lowered her head in shame. "I am sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You should not suffer because of me." The farmer shook his head. "You kept my fields alive. You saved my farm," he said firmly. "I will not send you away." Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. For the first time in years, someone had spoken for her, defended her, believed she was worth keeping. That night, when the fire burned low, she whispered a quiet vow in her heart. No matter the danger, no matter the whispers, she would stay true to her promise. She would give everything she had to the man who had given her a chance. The farmer did not hear her words, but he felt their weight. And as sleep came, he realized his life was no longer only his. It was tied to hers in ways he did not yet understand. The days became weeks, and the alien woman's place on the farm grew stronger. She rose before the sun, her hands already in the soil while the mist still lay over the fields. The farmer watched from a distance, surprised by her speed, her care, her quiet strength. Every row of crops she touched seemed to grow healthier, stronger, as if the plants trusted her. He noticed how she repaired old tools with scraps of metal, how she tied broken handles with cord that lasted longer than new ones. She did not speak much, but when she did, her words carried weight. "This soil is too dry," she said one morning, pointing to a patch of wilted plants. She showed him how to shift the water lines, how to use the earth's shape to keep moisture in. By the next week, the patch was alive again, green and bright. The farmer nodded to himself. realizing she was not only helping, she was teaching. The children of the village began to watch her from the fence. At first they were afraid, hiding behind posts, whispering about her strange eyes and strange skin. But when she bent down and showed them how to weave flowers into chains, their fear slowly faded. One brave child ran to her with a broken toy. She fixed it with careful hands, and the child smiled, running back with joy. The farmer saw this and felt something stir inside him, something warm. But not everyone welcomed her. The whispers in the village grew sharper. "She is not like us," they said. "She works the land, but what does she want in return? She will betray us one day." The farmer ignored their words, but he could not ignore the looks in their eyes. Danger was growing, not from her, but from those who hated her. One evening, as the sun sank red across the horizon, the farmer and the alien woman worked side by side. He wiped sweat from his brow and glanced at her. "You work harder than anyone I have seen," he said, his voice low. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I must," she whispered, "because I promised, and because this place is the only thing I have left." The silence stretched between them, heavy yet not uncomfortable. For the first time, he allowed himself to see her not as a stranger, not as a burden, but as a person. Her scars, her quiet strength, her unbroken will, all of it made him respect her more than he had expected. But respect was dangerous, he told himself. Respect could turn into something else, something he was not ready for. That night, the wind howled outside the farmhouse. The alien woman sat by the fire, her hands folded, her eyes staring into the flames. The farmer sat across from her, sharpening his knife. Neither spoke for a long time, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was a silence of two lives slowly weaving together, thread by thread. Suddenly, a knock thundered at the door. The farmer stood quickly, hand on his weapon. When he opened the door, 3 men from the village stepped inside without asking. Their faces hard, their voices sharp. "This must end," one of them said, pointing at the alien woman. "She is not welcome here. She will bring danger to us all. Send her away now." The farmer's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the doorframe. "She has done nothing but work, nothing but give," he said firmly. The men sneered. "You are blind. You let her in, and now she will take everything from you." The alien woman lowered her head, shame burning in her chest. She whispered softly, "I will leave if I must. I will not cause trouble." But before she could rise, the farmer's voice cut through the room like steel. "No," he said, "you will not leave. You belong here as much as anyone. She has earned her place." The men stared at him, shocked by his defiance. One spat on the floor, muttering curses before storming out into the night. The others followed, leaving the farmhouse heavy with silence. The alien woman lifted her eyes to him, tears shining though she tried to hide them. "You should not have done that," she whispered. "They will hate you now. They will turn against you." The farmer shook his head, his eyes steady. "Let them hate," he said. "I know the truth, and the truth is that you saved this farm. You saved me." For a moment, she could not speak, her chest tight with emotion she had buried for too long. She bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you," not as a servant, but as someone who finally felt seen. The farmer turned back to the fire, but inside, he knew something had changed. It was no longer pity that tied them together. It was trust, fragile but real, growing like the crops in his fields. And somewhere beyond the fields, in the shadows of the night, unseen eyes watched the farm, eyes that did not belong to the villagers, eyes that promised danger yet to come. The farm grew quiet after the confrontation, but the silence carried a heavy weight. The villagers no longer spoke openly, yet their eyes burned with distrust whenever the alien woman passed. Children who once played near her now hid behind their mothers. Men turned away with narrowed stares. She felt the shift like cold air pressing against her skin. The farmer noticed too, though he said nothing, his jaw set firm whenever they walked through the market. Still, she worked, her hands strong and steady, her promise unbroken. She repaired fences, fed animals, and tended the soil as if it were sacred. At night, she sat by the fire, her eyes distant, carrying memories she never shared. The farmer sometimes wished to ask her, to know her story, but he held back. He knew the wounds behind her silence were deep, and he feared reopening them. One afternoon, while the sky turned gray with clouds, a stranger came to the village. He wore a trader's cloak, heavy with dust, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp. He asked questions in the tavern, his voice smooth, his smile false. "Have you seen one of her kind?" he asked, thin, alone, desperate. The villagers exchanged glances, their whispers feeding the stranger's curiosity. By the time the farmer returned from the fields, he could feel the tension thick in the air. The alien woman was inside the farmhouse, unaware of the danger walking so close. The farmer entered quietly and looked at her, his voice low. "Someone is asking about you," he said. Her eyes widened, fear flashing like lightning across her face. She clutched the edge of the table, her knuckles white. "They are hunting me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They always come. They will not stop until I am taken." The farmer frowned, anger stirring in his chest. "Why?" he asked, but she only shook her head. "Not yet," she said softly. "I cannot tell you, not now." That night the wind carried unease across the village. The trader lingered, speaking to those who would listen, offering coin for secrets. Some resisted, but others, hungry for money, listened too closely. The farmer stayed awake, his weapon near, his eyes on the door. He knew danger was moving closer, step by step. The alien woman lay awake as well, staring at the ceiling. She thought of her people, of the night flames consumed everything. She remembered the ships, the chains, the cruel laughter of raiders. And she remembered running until her feet bled, until she had nothing left but the promise of survival. Now that past was chasing her again, and she feared it would consume the human who had given her shelter. The next day, whispers turned to sharp words. A group of villagers stopped the farmer in the market, their faces hard. "You must choose," one of them said. "Send her away, or she will bring ruin on us all." The farmer's eyes darkened, but before he could answer, the alien woman stepped forward. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "If my presence brings danger, then I will go," she said. Gasps rose from the crowd, but the farmer's voice thundered louder. "No," he said, "you will not go. This is my farm, my land, and you are under my protection." The villagers muttered, anger burning, but they dared not press further. That evening, the stranger's eyes glinted from the shadows of the trees. He had learned enough to know she was here, enough to send word to others. The alien woman felt his gaze, even without seeing it. Her chest tightened, her breath quickened, and she whispered, "It has begun." The farmer stood beside her, his hand resting on his blade. "Then we face it together," he said, his voice steady. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it, that she was not alone anymore, not a shadow drifting between ruins. Her promise had tied her fate to his, and his choice had tied his fate to hers. But as the night deepened, the sound of a distant horn echoed through the hills. A warning, a signal, a call. And both of them knew the real danger had finally arrived. The horn still echoed in the hills when silence returned. The alien woman sat by the fire, her hands trembling though she tried to hide it. The farmer watched her, his eyes steady but full of questions. At last he spoke, his voice low. "You said they are hunting you. Why? Who are they, and what do they want from you?" For a long time she did not answer, her gaze fixed on the flames. Then slowly, as if each word cost her strength, she began. "My people once had a city, bright and proud. We were healers, builders, dreamers." Her voice faltered, and her fingers dug into the cloth of her cloak. "But when the war came, we were broken. Those who survived were taken, sold, traded like goods." The farmer's jaw tightened, anger burning in his chest. She lifted her eyes to him, the pain in them sharp enough to cut. "I escaped, But they marked me. I am valuable to them, not as a person, but as a price. Her voice shook, and tears filled her eyes though she tried to blink them away. I had nothing left, nothing but my body and my labor. That is why I made that offer to you, not for desire, but for survival. The farmer's breath caught, the weight of her confession striking him like a blow. He remembered her first words, her trembling voice at his gates, and now he understood. It was not shame, not weakness, but the desperate will to live. He stepped closer, his hand resting firmly on her shoulder. "You are not a price," he said, his voice hard. "Not here, not ever again." For a moment she could not speak, the firelight reflecting in her tears. Her chest ached with something she had long forgotten. Hope. The silence between them was no longer empty, but filled with unspoken truth. They were bound now, not by bargain, but by choice. The farmer had seen her scars, and instead of turning away, he had chosen to stand beside her. But outside, the danger grew closer. The stranger who had asked questions did not leave. He sent signals, small flashes of light, across the hills. The raiders would come, drawn by greed and the promise of profit. The farmer sharpened his blade, his hand steady though his heart carried the weight of what was coming. The alien woman gathered her strength, no longer hiding in silence. "I will not run again," she said firmly. "If they come, I will fight." The farmer met her eyes, and for the first time, he saw not desperation, but fire. "You will not fight alone," he answered. The days that followed carried a heavy tension. Every sound in the fields, every shadow in the woods felt sharper, heavier. The villagers whispered more, some warning the farmer to give her up, others watching in fear. But he paid them no mind. His choice was made. One evening a storm rolled in, thunder shaking the ground, rain striking hard against the roof. The alien woman sat by the window, watching the lightning carve the sky. Her thoughts wandered to her lost people, her lost home, and she whispered softly, "If they had given us a chance, if they had seen us as more than slaves, we could have built wonders together." The farmer, standing beside her, answered simply, "Then we will build it here, even if it is only on this farm, even if it is only the two of us." Her heart ached at his words, not with pain, but with something she had almost forgotten existed. A bond forming between them, fragile yet unbreakable. The storm raged outside, but within the farmhouse, a new strength was born. No matter what the raiders brought, no matter what dangers lurked in the shadows, they would stand together. And for the first time in years, she believed she might not lose everything again. Yet in the distance, beyond the storm, lights moved on the horizon. Not the soft glow of village lanterns, but the cold, sharp glare of ships. The raiders were coming, their hunger sharpened by the promise of profit. And when they arrived, the bond between the farmer and the alien woman would be tested in fire. The storm had passed, leaving the ground wet and heavy with mud. The farmer stood at the edge of his fields, his eyes fixed on the horizon. In the distance, cold lights cut through the night, growing closer, brighter, sharper. He did not need words to know what it meant. The raiders were here, inside the farmhouse, the alien woman prepared in silence. She tied her cloak tight, her hand steady as she lifted the farmer's old rifle. Her eyes no longer carried only fear, they carried resolve. "This is where I stand," she whispered. "This is where I fight." The farmer nodded, his own blade gleaming in the lamplight. The first ship landed in the outer fields, its engines screaming against the quiet night. Men poured out, armored and armed, their faces hard, their voices cruel. The leader's laugh echoed across the farm. "Give her to us, farmer, and we'll leave your land in peace." The farmer stepped forward, his voice like iron. "You'll have nothing." The raiders sneered, weapons raised. But before they could strike, the alien woman fired. The shot cracked through the air, one raider falling into the mud. The battle began, chaos and fire spreading across the fields. The farmer fought with the strength of a man defending more than land. His blade struck true, his fist broke through armor. Beside him, the alien woman moved with speed born of desperation and skill. She fought like someone who had nothing left to lose but everything to protect. The villagers watched from the edges, some frozen in fear, some whispering that this was the end. Yet when they saw the farmer and the alien woman stand back to back, unbroken, some hearts stirred with shame. Two alone, holding against many, their bond burning brighter than fear. The raiders pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming. Flames licked the edge of the barn, smoke rising into the dark sky. The alien woman's breath came hard, her hands trembling from recoil. But still she fired, still she struck, refusing to give ground. At one moment, a raider lunged toward the farmer's unguarded side. Without thought, she threw herself into the path, her cry sharp as the blade cut across her arm. Pain surged through her, but she did not fall. She drove her own weapon into the raider, saving him. The farmer turned, rage flooding his eyes. "You will not touch her," he roared, his blade cutting down the next attacker. The battle raged until the ground was slick with rain and blood. The raiders, though strong, began to falter. They had not expected such resistance, not from a single farmer and the alien woman he sheltered. The leader snarled, calling for retreat, his voice bitter with anger. "This isn't over," he shouted, before vanishing back into the ship. The engines roared, the ships lifted, and the night grew quiet once more. The fields were broken, fences torn, but the farmhouse still stood. The farmer lowered his blade, his chest heaving. Beside him, the alien woman dropped the rifle, her arm bleeding, her body weak. But her eyes still burned with fire. He rushed to her, catching her before she fell. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice heavy with gratitude. She shook her head weakly. "No, we saved each other." Her blood stained his hands, but he held her tighter, unwilling to let go. From the village, silence lingered, broken only by the crackle of dying flames. The people had seen, their whispers gone, their doubts silenced. For in the face of raiders, it had not been the village that stood strong. It had been the farmer and the alien woman, side by side, unbroken. As dawn broke, the sky painted in pale gold, the farmer looked out over the wrecked fields. His land could be rebuilt, his fences repaired, but one truth was clear. He was no longer fighting only for himself. He was fighting for her, for the bond they now shared. And though danger would surely return, they would face it together. The dawn came slowly, spreading light over broken fields. Smoke drifted from the edges of the barn. Fences lay shattered, the soil scarred by battle. Yet amid the ruins, the farmhouse still stood, and within it so did they. The farmer sat by the alien woman's side, her wound bound with cloth, his hands stained with her blood but steady. She breathed weakly, her face pale, but her eyes opened to meet his. "You should have let me go," she whispered, her voice rough with pain. The farmer shook his head, his jaw firm. "No," he said, "you belong here now. You are not leaving, not ever again." Her lips trembled, not from weakness but from the weight of his words. For the first time, someone had spoken to her not as a burden, not as a price, but as family. The villagers gathered outside, their faces pale with shame. They had seen it all, the battle, the courage, the sacrifice. For years they had whispered that she was dangerous, but when danger truly came, it was she who stood to protect them. The eldest among them stepped forward, bowing his head. "We were wrong," he said. "You are one of us now, if you will have us." Tears filled her eyes, but she held them back. Slowly, she nodded, her voice soft but strong. "I asked for nothing but a chance to live, and he gave it to me. Now I will give everything I have, not just to him, but to all of you." Her words carried across the village like sunlight breaking through clouds. The farmer looked at her, pride swelling in his chest. Days passed, and though the farm was damaged, life returned. The villagers who once scorned her now worked beside her. She showed them skills they had never known, ways to grow stronger crops, ways to mend tools, ways to heal with herbs. Children no longer hid from her. They ran to her, laughing, calling her by name. She smiled, a smile that had been buried for too long. At night, when the stars filled the sky, she sat by the fire with the farmer. Her voice quiet, her eyes bright. Once I had nothing, I was empty, only surviving, but now, I have a home. The farmer nodded, his gaze fixed on her. You gave me more than you know. You gave me purpose again. But peace was never certain, and both of them knew it. The raiders might return, others might come. The world was still cruel and broken. Yet their bond had been tested in fire, and it had not broken. It had only grown stronger, unshakable, unyielding. Whatever came next, they would face it together. On the edge of the farm, new seeds were planted, tiny green shoots breaking through the dark soil. The alien woman touched the earth gently, her hands steady, her heart no longer afraid. Beside her, the farmer stood, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Two lives once shattered, now woven into one. She had nothing left, yet her offer had changed his life forever. And in return, his choice had given her something greater than survival. It had given her a future,